The restrooms are down the hall. Couple of administrative tasks. There are parking passes. If you parked in the garage, you can pick up parking pass down there at the, where you signed in. If they didn't, then sign in where you got your badge. If you didn't get one, there was a stack up down there. I think they're still down there. If not, see Holly. Holly will be back. She's the young lady sitting next to Teresa.
I can help too.
And she can help too, sorry. I didn't want to.
Holly and I are both, if any of you guys need
I figured that, but I didn't want to call you out unless I had explicit permission. First off, I'd like to thank you for all coming out on a, kind of a not great weather night, right? So I know the weather was a little challenging for everybody, but we're here, we're safe, we're warm, we're dry, so we're all good, right? So I'd like to thank our friends at UiPath, Dimitri and Jack. I'd like to thank our friends, Venus at Accelerate, for being the sponsors, for putting on a great program. I've had the privilege of seeing the slides from the presenters. And I just, a personal note, when Dimitri approached us about this, I thought this is outstanding. I have a particular interest based on my past professional experience in reviewing processes and trying to automate processes and streamline business processes. But now there's so much better tools than were back when I was doing that. But the whole concept of taking a business or a clinical process and mapping it all out, that's really hard to do. And it takes a lot of effort. And it takes a lot of leadership, leadership from the organization to create that mindset. And Kelly's going to go into all that stuff like that. I know when she was going through her slides, I kept asking her about governance. So there I go with my governance talk again. But it's just so important to have that leadership from the organization, top down, and instill that culture, because as we see these new AI tools come running out, you've got agentic AI, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But I think the future is that the organizations that have both the governance and the aptitude to convert, adapt to agentic AI process, I think those are the ones that are going to be successful in the future. Not only in healthcare, but just in business in general. And we're seeing a little bit of that right now. It's very, very disruptive on a lot of different organizations. And I know this is music to, UiPath Accelerate's ears because they're in the business of doing this, but this is really rolling out the things that they're going to be important to everybody's careers over the next several years and 10 years and continuing after that. So in the past year, we've seen the presentation on CoPath at our friends at Mercy. The Mercy came in and gave that presentation. Now we're going to see one today. So there's a lot of really exciting things happening in business optimization, business process redesigning and automation of that. So I'm really excited about what I'm seeing. And I hope you are too. Obviously you are, or you wouldn't be here on such a bad night, right? So by the way, I'm Scott Rich. Not that you care, but I'm the chapter president. So got a couple of chapter boards here. We got Brian, got Teresa. Ed is here running around with a laptop in his hand. I think that's it from our chapter board. Did I miss anybody else?
Always looking for people to join us, though.
Okay, opportunities. So you probably saw an email came out to me recently about things that are going on in our chapter. We met at the retreat and had the put together a strategic plan. There was 10 points that came out of that, and we have either posted that or will be posted on our chapter website. One of the things that we always talk about is if somebody would like to become a member of one of our committees to work on things. I know Brian is our membership chairman, Teresa is our register, but we're always looking for people to work on our chapter boards. And Brian will be the incoming president elect starting in July. So he will be president in the 2027-2028 board year. So we're gonna look forward to his leadership. We've got a succession plan that Brian will be president, then Dad and Rocco. So we've got some pipeline coming up, and that's kind of what you want in an organization, right? I like to say that the board asked me to stay on to be president because they want me to keep doing it until I get it right. So, that's where we're at with that. So a little bit of our chapter, we got 1,000 members plus, a lot of people on LinkedIn, a lot of people on Facebook. Be remiss if I didn't talk about the recognition we received this year. So it came out late this year. It came out, I don't know, February, right before the HIMSS conference, that we were one of a few chapters across the nation that were recognized as a gold chapter. So we've been, I'm very competitive. I'm not going to come out and say, oh yeah, I want it to be gold. But I thought silver was a more realistic opportunity for us. We got 2023 got bronze, 2024 got silver. I thought that was great. So it was really kind of a surprise when we got gold for 2025. But we'll take it, and we're very excited about that, our accomplishment. And we'll see what's in store for 2026, right? So upcoming chapter events is kind of sparse right now because we're kind of at the end of our 4th year. We do have our summer social on June 4th, and that's at Bristol Seafood. I know that young man back in the corner really likes it. So if you have any questions about the summer social and what's served there, he can give you all the detail you want. So with that, I'd like to thank our event sponsors, UiPath, Accelerate. We've got Dimitri, Jack, and Cletus right here. I'd like to thank all of our sustaining chapter sponsors, Connection, Microsoft, Pure Storage, UiPath, Primary Systems, iGel, AWS, Accelerate, Graybar, Ergotron, and HPE Aruba Networking. Without their participation and sponsorship, well, we would not be able to put on great events like we are right now, right? So with that said, I would like, before I call Kelly up, I would like to call up Cletus, and Cletus, could you tell us a little bit about Accelerate and what your relationship is with UiPath? Well,
yeah, nice to meet you all. Appreciate time. I won't keep Kelly too much away from this, and you're going to hear a lot from UiPath as well. But we are a diamond partner of UiPath. So our focus is automation and AI consulting and implementation services, everything from building your automation and AI pipeline to implementing it, actually building the automations and agents, supporting it once they're in production from a support operation model. We've been partners with UiPath for about almost 10 years now, and I've been with Accelerate for about 7. The tagline has been accelerating automation and AI long before this crazy AI buzz, but of course the AI buzz is warranted. It's very exciting times. And really our goal is to help our customers, especially in healthcare and the provider side, to really simplify the complex because it's very noisy and cloudy right now. And UiPath does a really good job of enabling us to do that because of their platform, combining RPA bots, intelligent agents with humans, and then orchestrating all of that through their product Maestro, which will be what puts them as the leader in this space. It's not as exciting as the bots and the agents and all that stuff, but the orchestration, the governance, like you mentioned, that is going to be what makes the leader, and they're well ahead. So appreciate the time today. Hope to meet you guys. And we have a blank booth just because we had some travel issues, but I'll be sure to make sure you guys have our logo and my business card and all that fun stuff. Appreciate it.
good, thanks a lot, appreciate it. So Kelly and I had the opportunity to look at her slides beforehand. We agreed that asking a question in the moment, if it's applicable to what she's presenting, is fair game. But a lot of stuff is going to be building upon things. So she's going to go into, what's agentic AI? Well, it's going to be some slides on there to describe that to you a little bit. So there is some questions and answers at the end, but there is something that's a burning topic that, you got to get that question out there. She agreed to take that on, but on special use cases only, right? So no further ado, I'd like to present Kelly and Robin. They're going to be our presenters from here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Come on up, Rob. All right, so a little bit about the agenda. So we're gonna talk about our automation journey. So how did we get here? How did this whole thing get started? High impact use cases. Robin's gonna help us go through some of those. Our lessons learned, and then we're gonna turn it over to UiPath, and then we're gonna have our live Q&A sessions. So me, Dr. Kelly Whitmire, PhD, not MD. You have a medical issue, call 911. All right, so I'm a PMP, Six Sigma Black Belt. So we talked about process and the importance of process. So very grounded in process automation. I have my ITIL expert, been a PMP since 2003. So I have lots of all those letters behind my name. All right, Robin, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. I'm Robin Kroll. I'm the automation manager at Mercy, well, one of them. I do not have quite as many certifications as Kelly, but a lot of experience in working with teams, looking at processes, understanding what that is, and how to turn those processes into something better with agentic and automation.
Yeah, so Robin is my process manager, and then Kevin, I have a technical manager that manages like infrastructure and things like that. We're gonna talk about the different types of roles that we have on the team as well as we go through this. So, Demetri, you wanna come up and introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, thanks for being here. Demetri Belnowski, I'm an account executive with UiPath. I've been with UiPath for 5 years now, so as you can imagine, we've seen a lot of change, and in this world of AI, super blessed to be working for a company like this. But yeah, I sit here on our healthcare team, so I work with different providers, life science companies, and payers, again, helping them all evaluate our technology and aligning your business problems with our technology to see if there might be a fit.
Absolutely. Hey, everyone, Jack Conley. I am a sales engineer, technical consultant, more of the expertise that how do you deploy automation. And so really pretty similar to Dimitri, I spent a ton of time, where are the challenges? We're trying to solve those challenges with automation, whether it's AI agents, robotics, you name it, a ton of capabilities out there. So I've been with the company for about 3 years now, seen some really cool agentic use cases out there in the wild that are operating today. And so the future is now. I would agree with Scott's sentiment on if we don't start doing these processes, it's going to be hard to keep focused on those other tools. So ultimately, we want to talk through just common use cases, how you can use software robots, and really where to start as well. Quick wins all the way to agentic AI. We'll kind of cover the spectrum of that. But yeah, it's pretty good. Okay.
Right, so a little bit about Mercy. Where we are stationed here, our headquarters is here in St. Louis. We're servicing 7 different states. We are a top 15 US healthcare system. $11 billion annual revenue and top 3 highest performing US ACOs. Okay, so to just jump in, how did we get this RPA journey started? So back in 2019, my old boss, Curtis Dudley, somebody said they knew him here earlier. I was actually brought into Mercy as the supply chain director. So I ran all the supply chain systems. And before that, I was at Ameren for 10 years and I ran their automation and innovation hub over there. And we had automation and RPA was one of the things that we managed over there, or that I managed over there. And so I talked to Curtis, actually met him on a plane. We talked about it about 1.5 years after I started Mercy. We started our RPA program. And it's kind of interesting how quickly we started up. So it was Hurricane Doran. You guys remember that? I went down to Key West when it started to go by there. So I got approved September of 2019. We went through RPA, RFP, and then we got the team. We looked at UiPath in October. The team was hired by November 18th. I'm pretty good with numbers. I remember dates for some odd reason. Team was hired November 18th. We got our first use case out the door December 8th of 2019. And it was something really simple, right? So everybody says start small with automation. We did it, was actually pulling something down off of a website. We had like 80 people going out to a website and they were all pulling down the same report. And we said, why would we do this? We're just going to pull it down, have a robot pull it down to kind of show automation capability. So that's kind of what we did. And then we just had everybody go out to this one shared site to go access it. Our next major automation was February 12th of 2019, and it was cash posting. Cash posting was pretty big. We had about 86 caregivers that were posting cash for Mercy. And what we ended up doing is, since it was such a big coordinated effort, we talked to folks, we talked to HR. We knew that it was going to be a huge impact to our organization. And so when I talk about impact, I'm talking about people impact, right? This is like kind of a bad thing, right? So as you're implementing automation and you say, okay, we've got 86 caregivers that are doing this, and we're probably going to impact about 65 to 70 of them. And so what we did is we put in HR programs. We offered early retirement. We did not want to be like, oh, don't go talk to the automation team or you're going to lose your job. That would be very bad when you go to implement this, right? So we started talking to everyone to say, what can we do? How can we implement this program? It was a huge success. You remember the numbers on that? It was 3.2 million. It was either 3.2 or 3.3 million for cash posting that we saved.
Wow.
Right off the cuff. Yes. So it was, yay, we saved all this money. Now what do we do next? And guess what happened after February of 2019? COVID hit, right? COVID. And then one of the things that always gets asked to me in the UiPath conferences is, what did you do during COVID? Did you pull back automation? I would say a lot of organizations did not move forward with automation. I talked to them a lot. We actually accelerated automation. I worked with the manager, actually the executive director that we did our cash posting implementation with. And we ended up with 33 different ideas on this spreadsheet, this magical idea spreadsheet that we started talking through. And we said, what can we do? How can we impact this? Because what happened after COVID hit? We had people that we said, don't come to work anymore. We don't even know what we're doing at this point, right? So we had functional managers that were actually trying to help the people part, like how do we manage this? And then we had technical managers that said, what can we do to automate this and turn this around quickly? So we automated 29 of 33 fairly quickly within 6 months. By that time, we had a whole different methodology and process on how we were doing things. So as people were coming back, we had to retrain them. You don't do this anymore, you do this, right? So that was a whole other ball of wax that we had to look at as people were coming back to work. We also offered programs of, if you don't come back to work, we can offer early retirement and things of that nature as well. So that's kind of how we started. And then COVID accelerated our implementation instead of hindered it like some of the other organizations. We also, as we started our journey, we actually worked with a partner. So just look at the slides. I'm skipping over things. We had a partner that came in and implemented our infrastructure so we could get started so quickly. We also had a partner that came in and trained our 7 folks on the team. Robin is one of the original 7 that started on the team back 7 years ago. So they came in, they trained, we upscaled quickly. And my plan to implement was to not have the partner be there a lot, right? Because I've heard lots of good things and lots of bad things about having a partner. But I wanted to make sure that we knew how to run our things, right? So that's how we implemented and how we rolled out. It worked really, really well. Our system implementation, we did train the trainer. So what that meant is they came in, they trained my staff, then we had a citizen development implementation. Does anybody know what citizen development is? Anybody? What do you think it is? What is it?
I am one of them.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that's just basically members of the corporation or business to help out with the automations, but they don't get as involved as a full-time. Don't do this full-time.
Right.
I can still do my own job, but still partake.
Yes, and so some folks that do citizen development do it half-time, part-time, some do it full-time. And so what citizen development is they actually go and they develop their own automations within their department, right? So let's say that you're in revenue cycle. Revenue cycle is a big one that we always look at automations at. And so you go to revenue cycle and they have someone that does payroll every day. So they can go and say, well, I do payroll every day. We can automate these processes. Another one that we keep getting asked to implement is year end or month end processing, right? So I do this every day. I'm gonna go automate this and then I'm gonna manage my own automation. That's what a citizen developer is.
Got a question about that,
Yes.
because, time, nobody has time to do the regular job, let alone doing that. So how do you align the executive leadership to, we gotta implement?
I could have almost paid you to ask me that question.
Inquiring
No.
minds.
Inquiring minds want to know, yes. So, so I always say, if you don't make time to automate, you never will. So if you automate this work, let's say that I'm doing payroll right now, right? And part of my payroll process is I go and I run all these reports and then I do all this math and I work 12 hours a day when I have to do this at the end of the month. If you spend the time doing that and now it only takes you an hour to do that, you just saved all of that time and effort, right? So what we do is we talk exactly opportunity costs, and we're going to talk about opportunity costs a lot in this presentation, right? So one of the things that Scott mentioned earlier was getting C-suite approval and making sure that they're in alignment with what you're doing. So a lot of times in order to get that approval, you work with your leadership and they say, okay, we're going to do this, or so-and-so is going to do this other work so we can automate this. And then once that's automated, now we're going to change the process to this, right? So there's a process alignment change when you think about automation. And we're going to talk about a lot of that stuff too as we go through the presentation. But processes change as you automate because you don't have to do all the work that you were doing before, right? So your work crew can go from X to Y, meaning the numbers can go down, and we've been asked to do that a lot because operational inefficiencies. And we're going to see that as we go through the presentation as well. Anything else on this one? All right. Next up. High impact use cases. So this is where Robin's going to come in. She's got all the details. So we're going to talk about some specifics here. We're going to talk about KPIs. We're going to talk about metrics. So if you've got questions on metrics and how do you determine value, hold those questions because I've got a lot of slides on that. And then currently right now, perhaps as of 2 weeks ago, we talked about citizen development. We have 130 automations that are in maintenance mode, meaning they're in production, they maintain them, they manage them, and they're actively building 15. My team now has automations that we manage. So when we think about things that we want to manage, it's those things that we want those groups or those teams to focus on their day to day. So as we think about that, we think of clinicians. We don't want a doctor managing automation, right? We want them to focus on patient care. Same thing with nurses. We're very, very short staffed in those areas. So we manage and maintain those. We have 25 that are in maintenance right now and 8 that are in active build. So I'm going to let Robin talk about the high impact use case.
Right. So Kelly touched on the cash posting automation. It's still to date our largest and most financially saving automation. To date, we are at 727,000 hours saved, totaling 349 FTEs and $15.3 million in labor savings. So that was since May of 2020. The next thing we talk about is Epic single instance. So when Mercy wasn't Mercy, it was St. Louis and it was Springfield. When we took on Epic, each of those areas kept their respective Epic instance. So we had 3 separate Epic instances. Caregivers were logging into those different instances and doing work. Mercy decided to convert, go to one single instance of Epic, which of course requires moving all of those patients from the legacy systems into the new single instance system. It was a one-time automation. We built it, we tested, we had the automation for roughly 1 month, and it created savings of 21,000 manual hours and $417,000 in labor savings.
And I want to talk about that one a little bit more. So think about any application that you have, and then you do like a M&A, do some mergers or, merge in. You're gonna have data, and you're gonna have data within those organizations or those applications that need to be merged in, right? So that was the big concern or issue. We actually have a data quality and data management team that was going through and looking at how do we bring this information in and how do we pull this data in? And they did this a lot when we had a merger or we bought something. Mercy buys a lot of different companies and hospitals. And they were working on these and they were doing these smaller ones. When we went to single instance and we had these automations running, we took these three huge databases and converted them. They said it was a lot cleaner, smoother than even converting something as small as Perryville coming in. Because of it was a one and done. We verified, validated, and tested the data and it looked good. We pushed it over and then it was crickets. So you can use automation for moving data into other applications and systems as well. Go ahead.
This is as compared to doing like a data conversion or like a upload.
You got it. So what we did is, we did a lot of verification and testing. The data quality team did a lot of that. And we probably ran through, I don't even know how many scenarios, like maybe 5, 10, 15 scenarios. Anytime there was a different data pull or a different data push, we would just, click the button, it would run. We would say, okay, well, here's 3 or 4 more different instances where we had some outliers. So then we would figure out why there was an outlier, we go fix it. So when we went live that night, push the button, everything converted over, and it was like, they were just sitting there going, like with their breath held. Like it was one of those deals, and they said it was the smoothest implementation from a data perspective.
That's incredible.
All right. Then we have our Medicaid redetermination. Give the patient drug credits for just a minute, but I'm gonna get back to that one. So Medicaid redetermination, when COVID hit, talk about COVID a little bit, there was a public health emergency and everybody was getting re-enrolled automatically for Medicaid without having to prove that they were still eligible. That came to an end in May of 23. And with that, the continuous enrollment was ceased. So then what do we do, right? Patients don't know. They don't know what they don't know. So that caused a big risk. So there was an automation that was put in place that would notify these patients. So we tagged into our back-end Epic Clarity database, extracted patients based on X amount of criteria, and then sent an email to those patients to let them know, hey, your Medicaid, we checked the website as well. So we go into Medicaid, verify that that patient was actually getting ready to expire, that their coverage was getting ready to expire, and then it would send them an email. Hey, you're getting ready to expire on this day, please resubmit your information so that you are still eligible. This was another big one that saves, still runs every day and has a savings of 96,000 annual hours, totaling a need for 46 FTEs and $2.9 million in labor savings and an estimated risk savings of over $1 million.
We're going to talk about hard and soft costs, so just keep that in the back of your mind.
All right. The next one that I'm going to talk about is our diabetes care model. So we have over 148,000 patients within Mercy per the diabetes registry, where we saw an opportunity to improve quality, cost, and service. So Mercy was looking for a solution to reduce the risk of that. There was a $200 million in net savings that was identified as value risk. So the request was that the automation team, what we did was built an automation that, again, pulls information from Epic, stating if a patient qualifies for a statin order. That would be sent to the providers 2 weeks before, kind of like the human in the loop, right? We don't want to really create an order for something like that without a provider approving it. So a report was pulled and sent to the providers. the providers had an option to opt the patient in or out. So they could look at it and say, you know, this patient needs to come in, I'm gonna opt them out. Once they verified, then a text message was sent to the patients that were okayed by the provider. The text message to the patient would say, yes, I want my statin order, or no, I do not. They said yes, that was fed back over to our team for us to go ahead and create that order for that statin.
Automatically in the system.
Yes.
Go ahead.
During email and texting, I know you guys have My Mercy, the portal now. I like it, it's fine, but I mean, I guess email and text, ugh, no,
Yeah.
from a HIPAA standpoint, how'd you guys?
So we utilized our DSA team to send the text messages. They built all of that through their security portion of their system. And we have API that talks back and forth. So the API, we send over the information for those patients. The DSA team runs it through their text. I don't remember what it was. Twilio? Yeah. And then when it comes back, then they feed that data back to us via API. So the RPA piece of that is kind of extracted. It's working with those other teams within the ministry.
And because it goes through the data team, it gets fed into the My Mercy record, so then you can see that that was like a message through My Mercy as well. So no matter how we communicate with the patient, it's consistent in every, all of the portals.
Yes, so, you know, phone numbers change, emails change. You know, you
Yes.
hate to have something go to somebody
That's
else
not,
is supposed to. but-
yeah. Yeah.
We're gonna talk about governance. That's all right.
So that, today, there are $296,000 in labor savings, 14 FTEs, and 1,000 manual hours. That is currently only for a handful of positions. We just had a meeting the other day to scale this across the ministry, so it's going to increase significantly once we have everybody implemented. We have over 900. The PNC remittance report, this was more of a security risk type automation where it just navigates to our PNC website, pulls down the current day and previous day remittance supplement report is what it's called, their website. And it identifies if any remittances came to us that are not a Mercy bank account. Are not supposed to come to a Mercy bank account, right? So when they send our remittance advices, they have the bank account that it was supposed to go to. It helps avoid that security risk of they'll send a deposit to see if it goes through and then they extract. So that is just a security risk savings. And that was estimated at $35 million. Something small, but still very, very helpful. That was, again, a risk. So that's off savings. And then I'll go back to the patient drug credits. So Kelly talked a little bit about our citizen development model, which is great because it works great for those smaller automations. So again, you don't want our team out there building and maintaining these small automations when we have bigger fish to fry, so to speak. So this is a smaller automation, and the process was that a business analyst was going out to Handicare website, pulling down a report that stated which patients needed a drug credit applied. They would go in, that analyst would then have to log into Epic, navigate to that patient account, post the credit, post a note, add a billing indicator, and then post the account. That is all fully automated now. Not a huge savings, but a lot of time savings, and it freed up that coworker to do other work. So, like I said, a smaller one, 846 manual hours, totaling the need for 0.5 FTEs and 19,000 in labor dollars far. But that's the beauty of the citizen developer program. The team really saw a need for this to be done. The automation, it allowed them to go ahead and automate it without having to wait for a high value press. That's everything.
All right, thank you, ma'am. All right, so we're gonna talk about numbers. This is the big question I get every year, multiple times at the UiPath conference. So there's a lesson here. So you have to wait till like 4 slides for me to tell you what the lesson is. Okay, so currently, we have about 200 closed projects. We probably have 200 because I pulled this data two weeks ago. 200 closed projects, 402 504.2 million in value, 378.8 in soft and 125.4 in hard value. So let me talk about soft and hard value a little bit. So I talked about having C-suite approval and sponsorship, and if you want this to be effective, ours was the CFO. And you know what CFO is like, right? Numbers. And so it was always like, tell us how we can save real money. So real money was FTE savings, or it was reducing a contract cost, or something of that nature. It was, we are going to reduce our budget by X amount of dollars next year. So that's kind of where we came in with the hard savings. Soft savings are things like something reduction, I can't see it, but cost avoidance. And I want to talk about this one specifically. And I want to talk about one of the use cases we talked about, which was the Epic single instance. So if we did not use automation for Epic single instance, do you remember the number? I don't remember. $417,000 and I think it was more than 17,000. It was $417,000. $417,000. I thought it was millions. No. Okay, $417,000. Still a big check to write, right? CFO doesn't like writing checks. $417,000 worth of labor we would have had to write a check for. So what I talked to Scott to Shannon about, because he was the CFO at the time, I said, it's kind of like a hard number disguised as soft savings, because you would have had to write the check if you wanted it done, and you wanted it done in that time frame. We had to have it done in that time frame. So cost avoidance, we have a lot of cost avoidance. Well, it's 2.7 million, but there's more now. But cost avoidance is a big, big deal, because if you don't have to write the check, or you don't have to add labor, or you don't have to add something that you would have had to add if you didn't have automation, to me, is it really hard or soft? So that's kind of a part of what I'm going to talk about these values. All right, another metric, because we got lots of metrics. Our active projects, 31 demands, $48.6 million in value. Some of those demands are kind of like, we haven't, they're baby demands, like new demands. They're infants. Like we just got them in the queue like last week or 2 weeks ago. So we haven't assessed the full value for all of those yet. We've got 32 projects waiting on resources at $943 million. Wow, shouldn't we get somebody to work on those? We don't know. What's the priority, right? Maybe they're a whole there's 32. Maybe we could get them done and knock it out, but maybe just one of those projects is 900 million, right? We don't really know. And then we got 15 active projects. That is $36.4 million. Next up, realized savings. So here's a whole different way to look at how we're managing money. So currently, and I know these are kind of blurry, from 2019 to 416, 1.4 million hours saved. So how do we get that number? We say for this one automation, we had 15 people doing this and it took them approximately 5 hours a day. So for every automation, we determine how much time is saved and how many people are doing that work. We calculate our FTE savings that way. We annualize our FTE savings that way. When we say labor dollars, if we know it's an analyst versus a access rep versus this, we work with HR and we say, how much do these people make on average? Right? And then we use that average number. So is it accurate? Not really, but kind of. You want us to come up with a number, we'll come up with a number, right? And then, let me see, I think I got one more of these. Yes. Forecasted savings, because you wanted more numbers, CFO, right? So when we look at what we have in queue, 12 months in the future, 164.7 thousand hours saved, 80 FTEs, and around $4.3 million based on just what we have in queue. So one of the lessons learned is when you get one of these, when you get automation up and running, have a queue, right? Prioritize your queue. Make sure you know what you need to work on. Make sure it aligns with your strategy, and we're going to talk about that in governance. But What does all of this mean? Right? What do all these numbers mean? It depends who's asking. That's what it really means. It depends on if it's that team asking or this team. But really what all this means, and this is part of the governance conversation. You should be managing numbers and dollars based on how you manage everything else in your portfolio across your organization. So if you're managing projects a certain way, or you're assessing demand a certain way, you should not just be doing it just this way for automation and this way for everything else, right? You should be managing it that way for your whole portfolio across your organization. And I think that's where a lot of organizations go, ooh, we don't do that good everywhere else. So the way that I tell people, and especially at UiPath conferences, that I answer this every single year at UiPath conferences, it should start. Because you shouldn't just be doing it for the automation portfolio. You should be doing it for everything across the board. So these numbers, we can tell you how many clicks we saved. We can tell you approximately how many dollars we saved since a certain time. The other thing that's important to know is these are compounded numbers. So what do I mean by that? It means if we automated something in 2020, we get that saving every year. So let's say that we saved $10,000 in 2020. In 21, we've saved 20,000. In 22, we saved 30,000. So they're compounded numbers as well. So something else to consider when you're thinking about automation and savings. Okay, lessons learned. We're going to talk about practical insights on building the automation pipeline. So I kind of talked about this. Have a pipeline. Make sure it aligns with what you're doing. So at Mercy, we do something now called ATOs. What do they call it? I can't remember. What are the things that we have to align everything to? OKRs. OKRs. I know it was three letters. Okay, don't tell me what I can't tell you what it stands for. See, objective key results. Thank you. That's what it stands for. You get the gold star for today.
Stop talking.
No. Good. But we make sure all of our automations align to those, right? So if they do, we say, hey, this is part of OKR1. We can do it. It's an alignment. We already have approval for this. Go do it. Because we know it's prioritized because those are built on our strategy, right? So we do that. Establishing governance and adoption frameworks. So let's talk about governance because we've talked about the whole time. So let's talk about governance. When you start an automation governance journey, you have to have policies, you have to have procedures, you have to have standards on how you're going to do something and how something is going to work across the board. You can't just roll it out and say, oh, hope it works. So what we ended up doing was I looked at all of these policies across the board on how do you implement good governance. So, and then I talked to our security guy, Phil. Phil says, we got to do these things. You have to make sure it's this, and you got to make sure it's that. You got to make sure that you're adhering to all these things. And you want to make sure that you're in alignment with security. Because if you're not, bad things happen. Or it takes a lot longer to get through security, right? That's a huge piece, security. Making sure you have training. So we built a COE, which is a Center of Excellence. And part of that is our governance of policy and how we manage policy and procedure. How do we manage security? How do we interact with security? When we first rolled out, there was not a solutioning team. We were the solutioning team, and I contacted one of the leaders that works with my leader and said, hey, we need to get a solution team. This is kind of like having the federal government not having the 3 different branches, right? So we were like, hey, we should be doing it this way. We should do it this way. So I said, hey, and now my buddy Greg, he manages the solutioning team. So we talked to them about solutions. And so I'm gonna just jump all over the board here. Automation, not RPA. So what I mean by that is my team is the automation team. I have this crazy long title now. It's about process and automation and innovation. Can't remember my title because it changes all the time. But when we look at automation, we look at it by process. Is there manual work that's happening across the industry, across our organization that needs to be automated? We do not care about the tool. We are tool agnostic. Even though we have UiPath here, they don't like us saying this. They don't like it. We talk about this all the time. So what that means is we want to make sure that we're implementing the right solution for the organization. Now, that might mean the first part of the process is going to be using RPA. The second part of the process is going to be using a Microsoft tool. The third part of the process is going to be intertwining with some other tool. And the last part of the process might be RPA again. It just depends on the process. And so I talked about having that team, and that's part of the governance as well. So we have automation engineers, which manage the infrastructure. They do the design work. They code and configure the automations. They help the citizen developers with their stuff, right? They help you guys with getting things through the test environment, through the production environment. And then we have process engineers. Now, process engineers go through and say, ooh, you do it this way now? Like you guys, we had one the other day, I think it was pharmacy, you were telling me, you're like, you wouldn't believe this. And you know what? If you are a good process expert, you go through any organization and you can say, you guys do this way? It should really be done this way. But you can't think of it being done by like people doing the work. So for instance, when we will go through and we say, we want to automate this for a robot to do the work versus a person to do the work, we might pull something up in a report. Like we have something called insight reports that run at 4 in the morning. So we might have an insight report run to meet a particular need. It's going to download, and then we're going to take that information from the report and go have a robot just go through it. Boom, 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 boom. For example, and I'm just going to pull something out. This is not a real example. If we get an error code 13 on a bill, we know that that means to go for United Healthcare. That means to go add an address. Right? So if then else logic, we can automate that extremely quickly. And we don't need a human doing that. That's human, not in the loop. That's called unattended automation. It just goes and does it. And our process experts have been trained. They're like ninja warriors. I'm prior military, so I always talk about them being this way. They go out and they can say, we're not going to do it the way that it used to be done. We're going to do it a different way because it makes sense from an automation standpoint to do it that way. Governance. I talked about security. I talked about making sure we have a COE. I talked about process. Those are the big key things. Training. We have a trainer on our team. So as we've implemented things like Studio, which is like UiPath on steroids, and then we have Studio X, which is kind of our citizen development. We train on those. So as we get new technology coming on board, like when we rolled out Studio X, we were kind of backwards when we rolled out, and we're going to talk about the federated versus decentralized. Decentralized model, we work with one group now that manages their own automations. My team manages, we have a federated model with the rest of the group because we want to manage and maintain their automation. So it just makes sense that way. So it really depends on what makes sense for your organization, how you roll out. What else? Anything else we can think of? I want to stop and ask questions about governance because it's come up multiple times. But those are the key elements, making sure you've got C-suite adoption, making sure that you understand how you want to roll out, making sure you have training, making sure you're in alignment with security, making sure that you're implementing the right solution at the right time, using the right technology. Okay, so currently we're working on agentic models. They're API enabled. We use APIs. We've been told technology is changing drastically, right? We've got all these new tools, AI and agentic and bots, right? All organizations do. So we're going to talk about that. Robin, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk a little bit about what we're doing with some of the agentic work.
Yeah, doing or want to do. So agents really open up a great opportunity across many organizations, I'm sure. But, you know, originally when you thought about RPA, you would have very structured data, very structured documents. Agents and AI open up the world for us to be able to read unstructured things and sort through. One of the big things we're working on currently is our fax automations. So every organization has faxes. I don't think those will ever go away, especially in healthcare. Our agents look at the fax and extract the patient information and say, hey, this patient needs this test and we need an order for that, right? So before we put our agent into production, somebody was going out, opening those faxes, using their human eyes to look at it, relabeling the PDF based on what was in that document, putting it in the correct folder for somebody to work. So there were just a lot of steps. We implemented the agent pulls it up, reads it, even in the unstructured format, handwritten, it doesn't matter. Extracts the patient information, relabels that file and moves it to RPA, then picks it up and puts it in the folder. So kind of that agent RPA mix. So we're getting some really exciting things that come out of that, right? So what else do we get? Medication refills, regular orders, right? And the physicians have to go in, or a team has to go in and enter those orders. So we're looking at working with the HL7s with Epic and actually automating the orders process so that a human doesn't even really have to touch it, only to verify. Because again, we don't want to enter orders for a medication or a test if it's not approved by the physician. So it will read the faxes, fill out the data. The provider can approve, yes, I want that is the correct test for that patient. And then it will feed into Epic and actually enter the order. So that removes that manual piece off of the physician as well.
And so it's pretty cool that the agents can go and the agentic bots can go in and just read it, even if it's unstructured. So that's the really neat technology.
I guess it's coming from a text source, but are you seeing any inaccuracies with like name, prescription name, test, because it's not standard English,
Occasionally.
misspellings, things like that?
Or the 95% accuracy rate.
A human, that would be a good goal for them to achieve, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, so it's 95%.
Okay, that's incredible.
And then just to touch on two key points before I hand it over, process optimization versus redesign. So we talked about my ninjas, my process optimization folks, right? And so you really have to think about, do we just have to optimize this process, or do we have to completely blow up the process and redesign, right? As you're going through this. As part of this, one of the key things that we need to think about, or that should be thought about, is as you're going through and creating new projects for your organization. And a big project that I always talk about is when you're changing out like doing a software upgrade. We're doing a big one right now at Mercy that I'm a huge part of right now for project onboarding or provider onboarding. And we're going from one system to a completely different system. And as we think about what is the work going to be like in the new system, there's a ton of these manual processes, and they're talking about hiring new people. And as you think about that, and every organization has this, about we're going from system A to system B, and now we've got to hire all these new people, right? We saw that even with the Workday implementation. You need to start thinking about, can we automate this work before you go live? You will reduce the cost of the overall implementation with automation. And then foundational work, everything is built around data management, right? How are you going to manage your data? What does the structures look like? How do we ensure that this other project over here and that other project over there, that they're going to combine, and the data is going to be synonymous. Somebody mentioned earlier about how do we ensure that the data is flowing through it accurately, right? We do that through our governance model. We make sure that we're pulling data through, that if there's multiple methods of where that data resides, that we're ensuring that it's in those other, the key source of the data. So we always make sure about that. So with that, and Robin talked about agentic, I'm going to hand it over to Mitri and the UiPath folks.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. That was awesome to hear the intricate details. I was curious looking at the list. And, guys, I think we'll talk about really where the Mercy team started and identifying, where are those quick wins, what's high volume enough where it makes sense to build these automations out. And so I always like to kind of kick off with just our capabilities, right? What can you do with the software plot? And Kelly, I also like how you framed it as not just RPA, multiple tools, multiple vendors. We are absolutely in the place of, if it's a better tool, if it's coming from Epic that has an agent, we're going to say, hey, use that agent. The systems, UiPath is truly trying to be the layering between those applications where you either lack API connectivity or there are some workflows that go between payer portals, EHRs, you name it, 10 different applications. Very painful, highly repetitive, mundane systems. And so this is kind of where we like to start. Logging into applications, right? Funny enough, multi-factor authentication can still do with robots, so no issue there. Whenever you do have system APIs available, API-based workflows also underneath the UiPath umbrella. File and folder management, like you had noted, you guys were renaming some PDFs, saving them into a shared folder somewhere. Direct database connections, making calculations, report building, you name it, right? We're trying to looking at those manual states and saying, what's high volume? Where do we know these employees are spending X amount of time in this process where they absolutely can be, adding to their other work streams and spending time in better value-adding activities. But ultimately, one of the most common areas here is been the PDF extraction. So eFax systems, you name it, keying data into another system. It is probably the most common use case amongst our net new customers. Very easy to implement. In UiPath, we're actually one of the best extraction vendors out there. I think 3 or 4 years in a row, Gartner's put us at the just most accurate for any type of PDF, unstructured, handwritten, you name it. So kind of tying this with the robot and saying, we're going to have a bot fetch those documents from the eFax system, hand them in to extract some fields, and then back to the robot to do some data entry. Now you could also add in an AI agent to that step, right? Like once we extract the fields from a document, maybe you need to summarize those. Maybe you need to do medical necessity for that medical record. You name it, that's what we're always tacking on. Start here, you can expand with an agent in the future. Crawl up front, right? It's always kind of our mentality. But the most successful customers are always starting with quick wins, high value, easy to build, easy to implement. And from there, kind of expanding scope into other departments, other areas. RCM absolutely being the heaviest hitter because there is so much admin work behind it. But that's basically it from robot capability standpoint. Now, this is a loaded slide, but this is truly all of the areas that we see as potential use cases for automation. In the orange on the left-hand side, you'll see all of the RCM areas, right? From front end, mid-cycle to back streams. I would say based on this list, just in orange, status checking, right? Prior auth statusing, claim statusing, have a bot go into those portals, check the status. And then usually some sort of notification, if we see this has been approved, great. Some customers are going to hand that off to a scheduling robot and then go ahead and start appointments. But ultimately, status checking is very common to start out with. We fully understand tons of payer portals, right? Traditional RPA, if those portals were changing, robots don't like change, right? So we would have to kind of go in, fine tune them, tell them about a new button that might appear. The RPA of 2026 is actually healing itself, right? So it's using some of those LLM capabilities, read the screen, be able to remap some of those new buttons and elements. So even the RPA layer has gotten a lot more reliable. And, when you talk about a developer going in to change a workflow, they're quite literally pushing a button of apply, and it's automatically going to adjust that, whatever your new system has changed for. Most commonly, the payer portals, right? It's going to change what they want us. And we had luckily solved that challenge with healing capabilities, but one other thing I'll call out here is you can see we're not department agnostic. UiPath as a whole, we're healthcare, of course, but all of their verticals. There are all the time, right? Departments are looking for automation. There are point-based tools out there that might be able to take on 1 or 2 pieces of capability. But this is where we're applying robots into every department, right? IT-based use cases for asset management. There's some cool areas where you can use a robot to monitor your VM availability. If the VM goes down, you can have failover workflow. And that's an opportunity for contract production, right? One of your soft ROI metrics. vSphere, VMware has very expensive licenses on availability. Having a robot be able to just monitor your sort of infrastructure and go ahead and take any immediate action if necessary, but this is a good one to take a look at, just in terms of where we see a lot of starting points. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was gonna have one thing, we talked about the C-suite alignment in the office of the CFO. If you're really looking to, get those hard savings and create a self-funding automation program, you want to take a look at that bright orange, right? Those are gonna be your hard savings and really where you're gonna, impress your boss.
It's another one to double click on, high volume, right? Yes, it's an investment for automation. We want to make sure that use case is going to support itself. Savings, hours back to the business. And always tracking the manual state, just like the Mercy team is doing, how long is this taking employees today? Once it's automated, we're running this 1,500 times per week. Much easier to kind of translate those numbers into saving metrics, but this is always a good one that we'll like to talk through. So with 2026, of course, the emergence of AI agents. UiPath, we've been doing automation for 10 or so years now, right, as a public company. The left-hand side of the screen is where we were founded. If then else, like you guys described earlier, very, very scripted, right? Robots kind of follow the same rules every single time, and they're not going in, right? There's a time and place where you do want all of those rules around robots because they're going to stay within these guardrails. The right-hand side is where we're seeing AI agents, and that's ultimately where we're doing some outcome-based solutions, right? Instead of it being, if this occurs, we're going to say, what outcome are you looking for, right? We're building these with natural language prompts, saying, hey, you're a clinical expert, you're going to be handling medical records. I'm looking for you to output this 30-page document into a one-page summary, right? You name it. That's one potential outcome for an agent. There are some other levers that we'll pull here in terms of context grounding, right? Giving these agents access to historical application data, claim data, you name it, right? Make them more accurate for your particular workflow. Most scenarios will see these context grounded with those payer policies. And so knowing exactly for medical necessity denials, what the criteria is the payer has kind of defined, and then go ahead and help to draft what that would be, following the pre-documentation, and then comparing that with those payer policies. So much more, less deterministic, we call it. If this happens, 100 other possible events could occur. Very good opportunity to use the AI agent. They're great at planning out a process, and you're still using robotic to take those actions. One example, right, if an agent needed to retrieve a patient medical record, you're going to use a robot, right? That robot's going to go into Epic, pull the record down, hand it to an agent to analyze, but the agent itself can't take any action. Just a thinker in that process. So we call them smarter robots, but either way, they kind of are going to be paired hand in hand. Robots are taking these steps. Maybe there's an OCR component for document processing. But lastly, give it to those agents to take on more document-based work. And so this is an example that is a very common solution in terms of denial management. Now, this is really end-to-end what we'll see here. This is a current customer of ours. They actually started on just those left two arrows on the denial reception and the indexing, whatever those particular cart codes. And this is where we say crawl, walk, run, right? Start with a quick win, have a robot go ahead and sort through all of those denial letters. Maybe they're routed off to specific teams based on the denial code. But ultimately, they were able to add agents to that current solution and help them with medical necessity denials. And so the two blue pieces in the middle, that's where we'll see our AI agent doing comparison. And truly what's happening here is we are having a bot go to an insurance portal to fetch down that payer policy. The agent will then fetch that medical documentation and then basically say, hey, the 6 criteria from, I think, Molina is our example here, high blood pressure, right, risk of severe infection. It's going to search the medical documentation for proof that those are potential areas of risk for this patient and put that all into the appeal letter that gets back to the payer. Of course, we do harp on human in the loop. And so in our draft here, you'll see we really call it expert in the loop, especially in the healthcare world, right? Allowing those nurse clinicians to put the final stamp of approval, right? Ask for their input, of course, make changes in line if needed. And a really cool feature is if they are making adjustments, the agent will actually learn those experts. And so the more and more that you're using the agents and you have employee feedback, they are paying attention to things. The next time you see this claim type, here's what was most successful for us to get that appealed. So ultimately, this is kind of the end-to-end flow of ingesting a denial letter, using OCR to extract the reasoning, the medical documentation, all the way to how can we draft that. Okay, let's do. Obviously, some really serious time savings for this customer, 14 million in bad debt reduction as well, right? Just kind of looking through when they could get those overturned appeals. They were saving quite a bit of money from it. Looks like definitely some unprocessed denials as well, a million. And I will say, this demo is built out for medical necessity. What you would really see is, particular denial codes, right? Is this a duplicate submission? If so, you can solve that with it, right? You don't need an AI agent to go in and remove it. Same thing for request additional documentation. Very common what we see. Go into our EHR and fetch those records now. Put them on the claim, resubmit that to the future. So there are areas, right, where medical necessity obviously is more complex than would need an agent, but you can also solve quite a few of those denial codes with just a robot as well. And that's what we're seeing is kind of a marrying between those two capabilities. What's most painful, if you want to start with the heavy hitters on that necessity, it would, fully support that decision. It's all down to how do we want to build this, right? Accelerate, I know, is somewhere in the room here. We work with them day in and day out. I see Bailey been on 40 Zoom calls, I think, in the last 2 weeks alone. And they're the ones that are going to make it real, right? So they'll do the implementation, the scoping of the processes, and really, going into production, QA scenarios, get sign off from your teams as well. It is normally a combined effort of both UiPath and our ecosystem. That's it from this slide. Any calls or go? This one we will give this demo video play. We'll need the audio. But this will ultimately show us the denial letter that we'll be ingesting via ETAC system into our document processing to not only extract some of the patient information from that denial letter, but also the reasoning. You'll see here in this particular denial letter, it does not include the CAR code. It says not medically necessary in natural language in the middle of the paragraph. And so one of the steps there is asking an agent to analyze the denial. What reason, what CAR code should we map this to? And from that point in time, it'll go ahead and proceed with let's fetch our documentation, let's generate the appeal. And in this demo, there are 3 opportunities for human loop, right? The first step is when we see the initial extraction. Give this a brief pause. So we hinted at this earlier. This is the orchestration platform called Maestro. And this is really, we are AI tool friendly. Bring in a third-party agent, bring in third-party robots, you name it. We don't mind, right? I think the future of UiPath is truly agentic orchestration. When you have experts, the employees, robots, OCR, AI agents, all part of one end-to-end workflow, it becomes that much more important for an orchestration and management layer. And that's exactly what we've built out. And we released Maestro alongside of our agent building capabilities. So you can also build those low-code agents directly on the platform. But ultimately, it gives you a dashboard to view the end-to-end process, rate for those COEs and champions to really dig into any given, this is a claim example. So, hey, pull this up. It's waiting on employee approval for some step. It's already gone through and looked at our appeal generation. Really great for kind of monitoring those complex workflows. But at this point in time, you can see it's already received that facts. It is doing the denial letter extraction. And we'll see this appear as a tool called Action Center, also embedded with the platform, but this is our human loop, right? No employees are ever going to have to see the development of those workflows. They'll get notifications via Slack, Teams, email, you name it. The document has come in, we're waiting for approval on that document. And so truly, we just want to make sure have we gotten the correct data points up to our denial letter. Once we do, we're going to click submit, hand it back to the robots and agents to take the next steps. On a full hour, but this is our agent builder on how you actually build those low-code agents. We are LLM friendly, so GPT, Claude, Gemini, there's 15 or 20 at this point. We have partnerships with all of them. Part of that partnership is also a zero retraining. So if an AI agent is processing data from one of your systems, none of those LLMs are going to be retraining or restoring any of that data. So that's just a partnership that we have in place. You can also have your own subscriptions. So let's say you like using OpenAI and everybody in the company started to allow the employees to use it as well. You can bring those subscriptions to UiPath and power the agent better. Working on more of the unattended back office use cases, but just a brief screenshot of our agent builder. I don't think we have to dig too deep into this today. This is actually a mapping file with the denial codes as well as some of those natural language descriptions. So I believe CO50 is medical necessity. It's going to check that mapping to say, like the correct denial code of this letter.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Maestro, looking at the overall value stream or map. But then Studio actually interfacing with the LLM and kind of running the query there. It does Maestro then look at the outputs cost and then sort of say, wow, this is super expensive to run this. And we optimize it in any way to sort of save money ultimately in using the LLM for that tactic. That makes sense?
It does. Yeah, I understand the question. We will be able to tell you what agents are consuming the amount of those tokens. And so not yet in terms of making them more efficient, right? Like how can I consume less tokens with the agent? That will be a cool feature. But we will be able to give you the metadata on when this agent runs, here's exactly how much it's consuming. And if you're finding the value is not there, right? Change it up. Make that an RPA step or reduce the scope of that automation. That's normally where the value conversations occur as well, or obliterate, like you said earlier. That works too. Yeah. Absolutely. This is another human loop step where we're basically saying in our denial letter, there's no actual denial code. So the agent has gone through and referenced, not medically necessary, CO50. Here's our reasoning. Arguably, you could skip this step, right? It's going to be very accurate because we have a file in Excel. But we like to show in demos a happy user at any point of process. Hand it back to the robots. That's exactly what we see here. Submit it, give it back to that bot. And ultimately, this is where we're hitting 4 different agents. You can see our medical necessity expert is doing the comparison of the documentation, medical records, against that payer policy to define that criteria. The next thing that we'll see is an evidence retriever. So whenever we do have access to the medical records, great, fetch them, use OCR to extract fields. However, you can also connect these into lab equipment, right? If you have systems where you can actively monitor patient's blood pressure as they're in the room, you can also have the evidence be fetched directly from the system as well. And one very cool one here is our claim historian. This is essentially looking at all the prior claims that we have submitted and basically saying, hey, when these were appealed, what was our chance of them being overturned? This will track the patterns that we've used. This will say, based on this denial code, we found this works really well for the payers. You can do that on a per payer basis as well, right? These types of denials versus these structures. So always referencing prior transactions and saying, we've seen this already 100 times over. Follow a similar structure as we generate that next appeal letter. And lastly, this is going to be our final human loop step, but ultimately a different look and feel. You can see in the prior 2 examples, it was more just a document on the left side with those fields on the right side. This is a custom application that we built specifically for med necessity. And these also can be, added into any workflow, but from the summary tab, you can see the total dollars at risk, right? We can see a bit of a patient summary here. We have their information, got denial tags that were pulled from the denial letter. Now, as you would walk through this as an expert, maybe we want to take a look at what the evidence actually showed. At the non-video version, I could click to it, but I think it's this next tab here. So under evidence, it's saying low blood pressure was one of that criteria from the payer policy. Within the documentation, it finds that his actual blood pressure rate is at this, and it says, where was this pulled from, right? Gives you a source for that documentation. So basically saying, hey, we check that box for medical necessity. Blood pressure was above this certain value. Same thing goes for hemorrhaging, right? The severe infection, onset kidney failure. All the proof that the agent is sound. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but ultimately, why that should be overturned in the field. 6 out of 6 criteria met for this situation. Of course, from that payer policy, you can see other criteria. Lastly, the actual structure of our draft letter. That can also be edited in line. I'll just bring this back. So this is where you can see the actual draft with add in the particular payer information to the header content, edit this in line directly with an action center. But the bulk of the work is already done for us. When we actually look at the criteria below, blood pressure, it names all 6 of those criteria in the policy and immediately puts the proof in behind that second bullet point. So even easier for the payers to review, it's all right there for them. One good structure that we found is pretty successful getting the field turned. But after this occurs, you would say, hey, do we want to submit this? You can submit, and this will go auto-generate that appeal, send it all the way back to the payer, whether that's an e-fax, whether that is email, EDI, you name it, plenty of methods to get that back over to payers. But the final step in the equation, this is really end-to-end, agentic orchestration. When you do have all those components, it can be a pain in the butt to manage. But ultimately, because we have all that capability within the platform, it makes it a lot less of a headache, I will say. But take a pause. I know there's a lot in that demo. Yeah, go ahead. Any questions?
Yeah, can you take your findings from the appeals and then use that for the initial submissions to prevent more denials long term?
Questions? So clean claim, basically. I would say you can. It's all going to be storing the same sort of references in terms of these claims historically have worked for us. Take that same structure and that same training and apply it to the initial submission. So we see it all the time, especially in prior auth. Prior auth submission being in the first place versus helping prior auth. So both halves of the equation can work.
Sure.
We would always ask, what's the larger challenge, right?
Right.
Is it an issue with prior auth submissions? If so, that's what that's structure, but absolutely, that's where we are customizable, right? Not everyone's the same. We have similar work streams, but that's where I think we have an advantage over those tools. Everyone claims to do it at the end time. Everyone's scenarios are a lot different than each other's. And so because we are a custom platform, building out any of these rules, any of these steps is fully capable of doing so. Versus trying to wrestle with those point tools, get them to massage to what they're liking. But yeah, question.
Oh, that's crazy to see. My mom was a medical record coder, focusing on denials. Looks like she retired at the right time.
I think another large component here is our medical records summarization.
Right.
Take your 100-page packets and give yourself something, right? That takes hours to parse through and generate videos like this. 500 words, or you name it, give the scenario, what are you looking for in that documentation? That's a component that we're seeing plugged into files, but use them at your will, right? If you only require summarizing records, you can use that and have it update the note section at fixed or whatever it might be. Solution's yours, so yeah, we are always standardized, right? It's never the exact click by click of what the current state is. Will help you to understand. You want to use automation to go forward with this different approach. So it's always a combined effort. Here's what's working today. Here's what we want in the future. We can kind of help you get to that state. But
Well, I'm curious, you said in your mom, said it's the right time for her to get out.
Sure to get out.
Well, but I mean, what if she, because of her knowledge in the business, is able to these tools
Right.
to fend off and create a tool, because I've been here long enough to know these things I'm not going to deal with. Right?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like, you can be a stronger human utilizing your rights.
That's the whole point.
Exactly.
Stronger humans know what they're doing, not
Right.
brand new. May or may not.
For sure.
you know, that's
a good point.
potentially a lot to take in there at the end of the session, but we have plenty of other demo videos. I mean, eligibility, status checking, those quick wins, super easy to implement. This is great. Referrals, that's a really cool agentic demo. And management course, we'll make sure to follow up with some materials, but yeah, appreciate everyone coming in on some great idea.
Please take a plushie, you know, kid, dog, etc. Please take one home.
No.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. It's been great. I probably got a couple of questions for you, but let's take care of everybody else's questions first. Questions? Any more questions?
I think we ever talked about sort of, just, Kelly was saying, there's all the savings, but I didn't quite know how that translated to more we saved, the more we might have spent, to maintain the automation.
Yeah, I know, I saw that.
Well, everything's license-based cost, so, that's part of, should we, what is the right tool, right? So as we look at what technology do we use, that's always should be part of the equation is what's the most cost-effective method to get this done? And it's even becoming more and more prevalent in this world of AI. Like, how do we do this? That's why if you have a solutioning team, that should be part of the solution is the cost, how much it's going to cost you to actually implement this technology. Absolutely.
Back to your point about, think about the process rather than,
Always think about the process. Yep.
there's a tool, is it like silver, bronze, silver, gold kind of cost level? Is that kind of how you were saying, license, but complexity is different.
There really will be the services cost, right? If you choose a low complexity use case, it's lower SW costs. So licensing behind them can be adjusted. It's very volume dependent. So if you come to us and say, hey, we need to do 13,000 insurance eligibility every day or once a week, that'll take a robot a certain amount of time. And these bots are capacity used, right? So it can be Monday morning, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Your bots are doing those eligibility checks. The rest of that calendar week, it's wide open projects. You can also get creative on priorities. So maybe you've got a process that has the types SLAs. You have 3 robots and they're all busy doing a medium priority job. They'll actually pause their operations, think on the highest priority, then move back to resume.
And we do that. I mean, we spend a lot of time, our team spends a lot of time saying, these are the highest priorities or lower priority. We want to do these, earlier. We work with like Epic, and when Epic reduced their downtime, now we have a bigger time frame to get things done, right? So we look at those things too. As other systems become more available, we expand the timing of how and when we implement our bots.
I don't know if that's the right survey. It links to one.
No, it's not. I'm looking at that earlier.
Okay, gotcha.
Oh, yeah, we got a better updated version for that. Anything else we can touch on? No? Stranger, any question goes?
And if there are questions after, I think that you have our contact information. Feel free to reach out to us.
I got a couple of questions. If there's no other questions, then I'll be sure everybody else's questions. Let me go.
So as you talked about FTE sharing and things like that, how did you manage employee expectations or concern about being replaced by automation and that kind of thing?
Oh boy, we talk about this still to this day. So we work directly. So I mentioned that we work with HR, right? So it's really about being a partner with that other senior leader. So we worked with the senior leader and said, what do you want to offer? And then we introduced them to HR to say, we need to look at other HR programs, training. At that time, when that happened, we had like a job freeze. And so we were opening it back up. So we said, hey, we have all of these other positions that we can retrain you. But the other piece of this is a lot of those folks retrained into higher paying positions when they wanted to stay. So there were some incentives about, hey, do you want to do this other job? You're going to get paid $4, $5, $6 more an hour. So a lot of them jumped at it, especially the younger employees that wanted to learn a different skill set. We also said, can we offer early retirement, and what does that look like, right? So I think if you work with your HR, there's those pieces, but right now we can't find enough good people to work. So that's the other thing is retraining and upskilling for other positions within your organization is huge right now.
Yeah, the reality is AI is helping a lot of people catch up, right?
And if you think about it, it's more like in conjunction with at this point, because we're also looking at attrition planning. And there's so many people leaving the workforce that you don't want to just go mass exodus. And then now a year later, you have to go hire a bunch of people, right? Especially if they're meeting your cultural needs and organizational needs, right? Good question.
So do you have a lot of clinical care pathways already established that get off the shelf that you could automate?
We did not. And so the first 2.5, 3 years, it was, wouldn't you say 2.5, 3 years? It was really revenue based. Really, it was the last, I would say 3 to 2.5, 3 years where we were starting to look at employee use cases.
How was that to work with that? Integration?
Well, we have to go and we have to figure out how Epic works. So it's really about working with the person that understands that component, that piece. And we talked a lot about reporting, right? So it wasn't really maybe even working with that team, and maybe it was like, can we get a report that gives us this information? So thinking about things differently, like we're not just gonna go in and log into the Epic system and pull this information. We're just gonna go pull a clarity report and go get it a different way.
I would think that people use cases like asthma clinics, that would be right for kind of process automation.
We did one for the heart, cardiology, and what was the other one? So, yeah, that was heart. Yeah.
Here's the new.
So that one was huge. And as Robin said, we're looking at expanding it. So they are very much, let's do it in a centralized group first, and then we'll expand later. So we're hearing about it. Yeah.
But ICU bedside telemetry data.
I don't know if nobody does.
Unrobot version.
Steve's one is the one that Steven built, the returning the monitors, do the monitors. Yeah,
I'm seeing me.
yeah. So we built that out because they weren't, machines weren't being. Right, they were-
We collecting that data already and you just,
They didn't even know where they were. So so we have these monitors all over the place and nobody could go find one when we needed one. So basically what we did is we
We
well,
did
no,
all
no,
that.
the data, bedside.
See that?
data.
I don't know if we're
And
doing
the
anything.
ICU.
Yeah, I don't know if we're doing anything with the data. That's the telemetry data itself, are we? I don't think we are yet.
Okay, I'm getting the hook here, so.
No, to say, ask your question louder. I don't know if everyone can hear it.
The question was, are you using, do you have a use case at your hospital to collect bedside telemetry data at the intensive care units?
We don't have a use case on what we would do with that once we collected it. So there's a whole other like data governance team that's working on collecting data across the organization. We would get involved if they said we were gonna take that data and do this other action with it, right? So I know the data team is collecting data all over across the ministry. Now, if they say we want to take that data and go do X, Y, Z with it, then we could get involved. But we don't have that use case. Then nobody's come to us with that use case.
Are you asking for sepsis detection? I'm trying to kind of find some predictive outcome from.
I'm looking for a use case for predictive analytics, for sepsis, or head wounds, any kind of, anything that will lead to a support clinical outcome. My experience has been,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not a clinician, but working with the clinicians and looking at the data, sometimes when you have a head wound type situation, that the clinical signs all look good real time, but when you tend to have a negative clinical outcome, week or 2 weeks later, you go back in and look at the data in retrospective. There's clinical signs that start,
Show up.
the values start to go bad, but in real time, you can't see it, but you have some kind of detection system that could collect that data and analyze that data. That would be very helpful for the clinician.
I've heard, Scott, a tool called ambient AI.
Mhm.
That's a cool one. And I know that's
Yeah.
more like audio.
Yeah, and that would be more like, and see, that to me is not an RPA use case. That's more of a data analytics use case that we would use with our data team. Yeah. So I don't know if they've done anything with that. I'm sure they
A
can.
little bit in the weeds here, but we can talk about this now.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's what, 6:30, it's pouring down raining anyway, so you're not gonna go anywhere. So I thought it was. So right now, if we ended, it's an hour, we're right at an hour and a half. We started at 5:10, so we'd be an hour and a half. So let's go with 1.5 continued credit units for your HIM certification. For those of which who have a HIM certification, that's important. I could be convinced to go farther. If you have some additional questions, I'll kick it up to 2 hours.
So my flight is on today.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank our speakers, all of our speakers. I think it's one of those sessions that we're gonna look back on in a few years and say, I learned a lot here, and this is starting something big. So, I think this is really a great session, and I'm glad we had time to go through this tonight. So thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And on behalf of the chapter board, I'd like to thank you all for, everybody for attending, and, we'll have more events posted on our website real soon. Thank you. Brian has a new survey code. He's doing it right.
If you want it, I've got it. I think most everyone's got passed it around.
Swag on it.
Yeah, sure. Good. I saw he was a locker.
I will take one of these. You would.
Right, we give you one?
Yep.
How you doing?
Good. Oh, still in the dance, so.